Hei, Snorre.
Da hører jeg deg. Flott. Vi venter på et par frem til nå i hvert fall, og så håper jeg det kommer flere.
Er vi bare 2?
Foreløpig. Men det skal komme 2 som skal forklare. Jeg skal snakke litt om akademia i hvert fall. Så må jeg jobbe litt med broadcasting. Jeg gjorde en liten feil i går ved å flytte.
Ja.
Så,
Jeg så at jeg gikk inn i går, så da var jeg alene.
ja, det beklager jeg.
Det var litt sånn feil dato på side her, ja.
Ja. Det skal vi se her nå. Ja. Der, ja.
Is on.
Hello.
Hello.
Let's see if Marius shows up. Give it a couple more minutes and then we can begin. I can do the introduction. It's worth noting that everything we do here is recorded, and it is to be able to spread the word when, because I use these recordings as something to point towards every time I have discussions around in Norway. And this one is also quite crucial to make sure that people understand how the academia approached this problem as well. And I'm gonna take a note on working harder on making sure that we get a bigger joint crowd, but we did a mistake yesterday, so we might have lost a couple of people through that procedure. Hi, Marius.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Why the calendar invite had the wrong meet?
It did? Oh yeah, okay. Yeah, I see that it actually added Google Docs as well. I'm sorry for that.
All right. Because I was on the other one. I was like, okay, where is everybody?
The good thing about using Jitsi is that it allows us to live stream to YouTube, so we can keep the recording, while Google Docs don't allow recording unless you pay a lot of money. So
okay, so this one is better.
Yeah, for the public meetings, absolutely.
Yeah, all right. Apologies, I jumped a bit late. I literally had back-to-back meetings today with the lecture from 8:30 in the morning, including like I eat lunch here in front of the screen on one of the meetings. So nightmare. Like I hate my life.
Then we're two. I just came out of the diff interoperability meeting and had to eat pastry as lunch. Yeah. It's heavy.
I know. Somehow, I don't know. The start of the year is terrible. We have lots of bureaucracy, and we had to change all the examinations for the COVID again, and replan the coursework and all the lectures. Man, it's nightmare.
Cool.
I blame COVID, but I don't think it's COVID. I think it's just general bureaucracy increasing,
Yeah. Well, cool.
Marius, where are you located? Are you sitting in Norway or is another country?
Yeah, I'm in Gjøvik.
Gjøvik, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, great. We can kind of get through the initial program, so we can hear from you guys, and then we can have a more lively discussion afterwards. I'm gonna, as I said now 3 or 4 times, I'm gonna work on getting more input here. I've been using our mailing list and Meetup, but I have to start trying to use other portals as well. But I will try to get that improved. But again, it's recorded, so it will always be saved in the cloud. So thanks again for showing up, guys. We have been working a lot with academia for a while. I've been working with Marius, and we have also had students working on the subject of SSI. And now we have invited them to come and talk a little bit about exactly what they're doing right now. We can either, who wants to start, Anushka or Marius? Maybe it's better if Marius starts and then lead over to Anushka.
Okay, I can. Unfortunately I didn't prepare any formal slides or anything, so I just talk. So we have been working with Divala for a couple of years already, trying to get some Norwegian initiatives around SSI off the ground. And we have managed to establish a decentralization lab at NTNU, which is focusing on decentralization technologies involving self-sovereign identity solutions in general, decentralized identity solutions, decentralized peer-to-peer systems, blockchain systems, cryptocurrencies, and decentralized finance. We have kind of a long history of collaborating with law enforcement in tracing illegal activities which are benefiting from the privacy-preserving and decentralization technologies, such as cryptocurrency, for example. And we have been slowly building capabilities in regards to analysis and de-anonymization and attacks which can happen on decentralized systems. We have a couple of master and PhD students working with us. We have a good close collaboration with Norwegian police. We also work with the standards organizations like ISO in standardizing some of the blockchain related activities. And we are also collaborating with international law enforcement like Interpol and Europol and helping them to understand limitations and also understand some of the properties of the anonymity and privacy preserving technologies which are sort of emerging. With Divala and Snorre in particular, we have been applying for some funding and trying to push some work in relation to SSI interoperability and SSI standards. We have co-supervised bachelor projects, and now we sort of working on master projects. And we also have a PhD student in his final stages of his research who is helping us out, Abilay. He's currently on leave, like on holiday leave, but he will be back. He's back actually tomorrow, and he will continue helping us. We have put a proposal last year, but we sort of don't receive the formal response for that one yet. And the new funding round happens in the beginning of February. So we will probably resubmit or reissue the funding request for a work in relation to interoperability of some of the solutions which are already on the market, but not necessarily is known how they actually work together. So that the project is about establishing what already works and what doesn't. And as the stack gets solidified and like the some of the protocols become sort of standards and are more and more widely used, some of the semantic layers and some of the presentation layers of how things are kind of interchanged and how you build your sort of trust anchors are still work in progress. It's still a little bit uncertain exactly how it will work in an interoperable way. And most solutions are kind of, even though the whole premise of the technology is to break the silos, a lot of use cases and a lot of coming up implementations are creating new small silos to kind of lock in users into particular representations or particular service providers. And that's where the kind of the research work is ongoing. So one of these aspects is in relation to representing well-known credentials that we currently use, such as your identity documents like your driving license or your identity card or your passport, or some of the credentials related to your financial operations, which require like KYC or some anti-money laundering provisions. So one of the projects that we're currently working on, and Anushka will talk a little bit more about it, is in the domain of taking existing credential providers and trying to map them into the verifiable credentials, and then using the existing frameworks and existing technologies, demonstrate where the interoperability breaks down. And also when you're converting existing documents, like for example, you take your national ID card, there is a lot of redundancy between the national ID card and your birth certificate. For example, both of them contain your name. If you think about it as a computer scientist, that violates some of the normal forms of data representation, and introduces possible bugs where you have incorrect name in one of those documents, and then the attributes don't match. I literally have that situation with my daughter. My daughter has documentation in Polish system. She has a birth certificate, and now she also has a passport. And on her birth certificate, the maiden name of her mom is spelled correctly, but in her passport, the maiden name of her mom is spelled incorrectly. And unfolding that, going through all the fuss of like solving a simple typo. Somebody made a typo when they were typing my daughter's mom's maiden name in one of the attributes. Kind of causes the kind of headache, because according to her passport, my wife is not her mom because the surname is wrong. So like you can think about those problems when you kind of mapping the existing documents into verifiable credentials, and how should you do that? Should you repeat attributes into multiple verifiable credentials, or should avoid repetition and try to link them and kind of combine them in the presentation layer instead? And that's what some of the aspects of Anushka's work are. She will try out, she will kind of play with different ways of doing this, and then analyze what are the pros and cons of the different models. But let me stop bragging about that, and let her talk a little bit more about her work.
If we could just do a couple of questions before we move onward. So like, for example, human errors will happen at some point, but
Correct.
Since this is a physical thing, it's going to take a long time to get it printed probably, or get it changed, or...
Well, the funny thing is that error kind of existed for 15 years, because we did that like 15 years ago when my daughter was born. She was registered, she was issued a birth certificate, and then we applied for a passport, and she got a passport. And for 15 years, we didn't know that there is a bug. And now when we were renewing her passport for like, third or fourth time, the lady at the counter, she said, actually, there is an inconsistency. I can see it on the screen that there is an inconsistency because the data doesn't match. But on her passport, the data was sort of not like, it's not printed in the passport itself. It's kind of it's part of the electronic data in the passport, but not on the physical document. So we couldn't even see that there was a bug. And that's even worse, right? So if there is a bug and you cannot see it for 15 years, then the system is broken, right? If someone made a mistake and mistyped something in one of your documents, you should immediately see that there is a bug, and immediately you should be able to do something with it. In that case, it's like a little bit more tricky than just a problem. So yes, I agree with you. Like, mistakes will happen. The thing is that when a mistake happens, it should be easy to see it. It should be easy to be able to notice that there is a mistake. And me as a owner of my own data, in a sense, I should kind of see that the mistake being there. Like, it's about my records.
Yeah.
Like it and me not being able to even investigate or to check if my records are correct, that's part of the problem. And maybe SSI will address it, or maybe not. Maybe that's kind of orthogonal problem. But that's why I think Anushka is sort of checking that out, and that's part of the work that she will do. I have to mention also that originally, her original master project was around a driver license. We were trying to continue the driver license scenario that we have worked before, because it's a kind of a well understood metaphor. It's kind of a well established use case, and we know already that, for example, Norway issuing a digital driving license in a form of an app is not really a digital driving license, because it's not possible for a computer to read it. It's designed to be kind of demonstrable to people, and it's only kind of like a electronic representation of a paper document. It's not really an electronic document. So in that sense, there is a bit of a misconception of why we want electronic documents. One reason is to make things simpler and reduce the kind of the transaction costs for certain operations. But another one is to facilitate machine-to-machine communication, such that certain agents representing me in a form of a wallet or in a form of some sort of daemon can negotiate or can talk on my behalf with certain services, like governmental services. And they can do a proper secure handshakes, and they can do proper secure transactions. And we see that, for example, with BankID. BankID is a great invention which simplifies third parties and service providers to integrate easily a kind of a simple identity check. And that kind of opens up a plethora of different use cases in the private and public sectors. And that's how, credentials and things should work. So, well, we kind of exploring, and we also identifying how technology is misapplied, how technology sometimes has good intentions, but is not really designed or implemented in a way that makes, creates value out of the setup.
Do you have any further questions, Didier, or should we move on to hearing Anushka's proposal?
No, please go on. No questions so far. Thanks.
All right, Anushka, the floor is yours then.
Yeah, thank you. Before I present, like Marius mentioned, so there has been some change in the topic. I wrote an email to you, Snar. I hope you got it. So, and right now I'm still not very certain about my research questions, and we are still working on it. Since the topic has been changed slightly. So yeah. Also, introducing myself, I am a master's student, and I will be in NTNU UVic, and I'll be doing my thesis this semester. And now maybe I can share my screen.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So now I am trying to look into using self-sovereignty in financial services, and especially in KYC. So there has been some research around this area, and I would like to further investigate some of the other aspects that I'll be talking about. So what is the problem right now is, so KYC is a process of it's like a recommendation or a standard that's done by the financial institution to make sure that there are that urges to not open anonymous accounts or accounts with fictitious name. That's basically to avoid money laundering or finance terrorism. So it's a process to check that and it's like it's a process that involves customer to build a relationship with financial institution through a credible document. So it's basically to for a bank to know a customer well, and that it's not the customer is not suspicious. But the cost involved in this use process is very high. It's time consuming and inconvenient to both. It's very high, so it according to one of the surveys are about 800 financial institution, it was found that the annual cost for KYC per bank is approximately around USD 60 million. The survey was conducted by Thomson Reuters. So it's very costly. So that's one of the problems in the existing system. The another is it's inconvenient to customer, and it's a repetitive process in a way that I go to one financial institute and I prove that I am a genuine customer, and then I have to go through the same process to another financial institution that I go to, which is very repetitive and inconvenient. So this is another problem in the existing case. Third, I found it in. Third is I am not sure how common it is around Europe, but it's a very big issue to where I come from. So there are a lot of scam calls pretending to be banks, and there is no way a customer can authorize its bank. So this also is one of the problem that I think is possible to solve using SSI technology. And it's not like all the calls from the banks are always wrong, because sometimes bank also call for like genuine to sell some of their schemes or to inform customers about something. So there must be some way to trust a bank from that a customer should be able to make sure that the call is from a genuine bank. And another problem, what I found by some research, is that for any financial institution, if it wants to form a relationship with the bank to use some of its services, it's a very long process, because a bank deals with sensitive information, and there is a long process of customer due diligence that needs to be done, and it takes 12 to 18 months. So this is also one of the problems in the existing system. So my motivation, or maybe I can. My motivation is that since SSI is secure by design and it offers enhanced privacy feature, it can solve some of the issues in the current KYC process. Also, so if this process can be made smoother and time efficient, it can be more attractive from the customer's perspective. In addition, it can reduce cost and also help a company gain a competitive advantage. Another is for a KYC process, human resource and cost is involved, like I mentioned earlier, and some of this part could be automated using SSI system, using verifiable credentials. And as this decentralized design would also enable and allow for interbank collaboration using reusable KYC. So these are my motivation, and these are the research questions that I would hope to work on in this next semester, which is how does the existing KYC work and what technologies have been used to make this system efficient? What are the issues with the current system, and if SSI could fix some of these issues? What type of SSI solution is most suitable for this use case? So there are different SSI solutions that are available at this moment. We have Sovereign, we have Ion, so we can I would try to look into what would best suit our use case. And also I would and the other question is, how does the proposed system impact financial services and customers in terms of cost, convenience, privacy, and security? So, so my planned contribution for the thesis is to present a new architectural perspective on implementation of KYC process based on SSI technology, to present a more user-centric method and efficient implementation of the whole process in financial institution, and to understand the challenges and evaluate the feasibility of the SSI system in the whole process. Yeah, so that is what I plan to do this semester. And about what Marius mentioned earlier, also even in this process there are it is prone to some kinds of human errors. So we, like he mentioned, we would try to see what is the best way to address some of these issues. Thank you.
Cool, thanks. Can we go back to research questions so we can kind of just talk a little bit about them? So Didier, coming from identity world in stereo, do you see some of these same issues where you come or from your experience?
Sorry?
I was talking to Didier, so we have a discussion now a little bit around this.
Let me think about it. But the first thing that I was thinking when I saw your problem statement was the fact that as a customer, it's very, for me at least, painful to send over so many ID documents, copy of it, and where I have to trust that the bank will take care of it properly, will protect it. So I mean, you are addressing that in the how you can address enhanced privacy, but this is really a big problem as I see actually for the end user, for the customer. That I miss in the problem statement. Yeah, Risha's question.
Do you want to add, like, repeat the concrete missing part that is difficult for the user as an end user? We go to the problem statements, Anushka.
Yeah. The slide 2 here, inconvenience to customer. Of course, this is a repetitive process, and it's a heavy process that takes time, and it's also uncomfortable to send over a lot of ID documents. I mean, you have to send a copy of a passport, you have to take a selfie and do a lot of stuff that is very heavy, and then you have to trust that they protect it correctly, and
Yep.
Of course there are honeypots.
Yeah, that's true. The situation is even more complicated because, for example, in German jurisdiction, to do KYC electronically, you have to attach a video of somebody holding the documents. It's like required by law, right? And that is a nuisance. And if you have to repeat it multiple times for different banks, that's even more nuisance. And then what we were wondering, is it possible to have a verifiable credential that confirms that this video has been taken and you have this video, and it's sort of like a part of the proof that you can sort of reuse the same video with multiple providers, because the inconvenience to customers come from the process itself, and then it comes from the repetitiveness of the process. So hopefully the repetitiveness can be addressed, but the difficulty of the process itself, that's hard to eliminate, because somehow this the identity needs to be established. So it needs to be kind of a painful process, right?
Yeah.
But going through this painful process once is better than kind of repeating it multiple times.
Yeah, that's what my point, because now we have to do that at many locations. I mean, and therefore, if you have done it once, it is verified once, and you can rely on it for the others, then that would be a very great, achievement.
Yeah, so I think the sort of the holy grail here is the reuse, that somehow if I trust that particular bank, and they've already went through the process, the heavy process of onboarding the customer, they can kind of I can carry over that trust to me if I already have the trust relationship established, right?
Yeah.
And
I think the first onboarding process, like only the first time, would be a little complicated, and then we can use the same credential. Yeah, I think so.
And because actually, if you got a credential from your governments that you can prove your identity, then all would the video or stuff like that would that be necessary? I don't think it would be necessary anymore if the actors can have trust in the credential that I can prove. That's prove my identity.
yeah, I agree that once you have a certain level of identity established, let's say a government identity document, then having these extra steps is unnecessary because the heavy process has already took place. The only reason I think why the German legislators require this sort of video is because it's easy to fake physical documents. And that's what makes it sort of require them to do this extra step. It's sort of, but I don't know, like it's a little bit beyond my jurisdiction of why some jurisdictions require video and some don't.
Yeah. So if we talk a little bit about like trust has to start somewhere, and it doesn't. Right now, we're lucky enough that we can start SSI from BankID, or the ID port.
Yeah.
But that's BankIDs usually. But BankID had to start somewhere, and that process was horrendous.
Mm-hmm.
Like you had to meet up at bank and show your passport, but then it goes down to a human process, and there could be a lot of people misreading that information. I've heard a lot about people heard people tell stories about being able to fake it to get a BankID that it's not a super big problem.
Mm-hmm.
So there's of course something there in the process that has to happen, but for us as of now, we can start with one trusted layer and build upon it with more trusted data, and build like a KYC profile based on different types of data.
Exactly.
As long as we have one little piece of trust that we can start sharing, and that is BankID, because we have been able to digitize our identity once. So let's not kind of do it over again, and let's kind of build on what's there, but build more powerful KYC solutions, because a problem that's been discussed in a lot of forums I've been in is that if you KYC yourself 20 years ago, it's maybe not the same KYC, like exactly the same KYC, unless you just talk about identify yourself. But if you're going to offer more complex services, you might want to have a more live KYC,
Mm-hmm.
which kind of pulls upon data that you've accumulated over years, and can build profiles based off of that. And how easy would it be, like, oh, now I'm going to use this service, but they want updated data from my bank and potentially from the post office to know that I live there where I live. And now it's like taking a picture of your paper to prove it, but it could have been just simple credentials that you could acquire to build up this profile. But it's a very interesting question, because I wonder if the KYC process today is like not the first one, but further ones are complicated because we don't have the technology to transfer data trustworthy without having APIs.
Something I wonder with the KYC, one reason that we are in Norway, we are not very much bothered by that, because we have this BankID. but as soon as you use international companies, then you have to do the KYC, and they only trust the passport.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you make the KYC electronically? I mean, to cross the borders, how can you make sure that the US or whatever institution, or a company who has a requirement to do KYC can verify that your identity is coming from the Norwegian government, and it's something they can.
So they trust your passport today, right?
Yeah.
So they need to know about Norway as an issuer.
Yes.
Then you have, then they get this identifier that is Norway, and then there's a cryptographic signature that is being rotated so that you kind of keep it fresh, but it's being issued with that identifier, which is Norway, and then you get a passport credential. And then they will see, well, you are a Norwegian citizen based on the credential you are able to provide. And this comes a little bit back to the questions that Marius raised, that do we want like one big credential for everything, or like per attribute, because you want to expose less data and make it more flexible in terms of reissuance and everything. But these are super, super interesting questions to talk about with the issuers themselves. And I think that's what we need to be able to manage, is to get those issuers in place and talk about their problems. Do you plan on interviewing any issuers, Anushka?
Sorry?
Do you plan on interviewing any of the people doing KYC and potentially issue?
I'm also Signicat is also involved with me. I'm also working with Signicat in collaboration with Signicat, and we were discussing if, for now, since they have a lot of contacts with banks and financial institutions, we were hoping if we could get their assistance in issuing these credentials as issuers.
Yeah, the answer is yes, and also the reason why Anushka changed the topic is because of the ease of interviewing the issuers. Because we have Signicat, they have experience doing certain work for the financial sector and for providing some credentials in that space themselves. And also they have customers. Most of their customers are sort of from financial sector as well. So that's what was the reason. Like, we talked with them about interviewing, Stop Vegvesen and some rental car companies, and how they do validation of drivers and driving licenses and so on. But that would require a little bit more external kind of know-how and kind of talking to external partners, and it was easier to find them in kind of a financial sector. So we're hoping that Anushka will be able to run some expert interviews and also some expert evaluations on her models, on how, like, what she proposes as a kind of a working model. So that is part of the work plan. Yeah,
that's cool. It's going to be interesting to see the outcome of this, and it'd be great to have it back in a half year's time. But it is a big problem, and with Bank ID today, I think that's, since they cannot move data in a flexible way, we don't have that data movement possibility, and with a proper data movement, we potentially can solve a lot of our existing trust issues.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
If you go to a couple of research questions, we can talk a little bit about them.
Yes.
So, have you done any digging to this, or is it more like questions to be answered?
Yeah, so these are right now. I have started learning about this, and there are some projects that I've done in SSI in general. But about these use case, this is the first step. So I think I'll be able to answer more clearly the next time we meet.
Yeah. So
But are you going to do that like in Norway, or are you trying to address it as a holistic?
From Norway only.
Just for Norway, okay.
Mhm.
So there are some initiatives like the new IDAS initiative in Europe,
yeah.
And I think we need to look into that. But because it's a little bit early, and because she only has a couple of months to finish up the thesis, I think her scope needs to be restricted to sort of a single jurisdiction for the time being. But this as you pointed out, those cross-jurisdictional, cross-country arrangements, they are kind of important. And there must be some mechanisms to unify it, to kind of allow my Norwegian credentials to be presented in another country and be recognized and be kind of accepted, same as my passport is at the moment, right?
Yeah. And the opposite for the because that's really what I see at my customers is the opposite when you have IT providers from other countries than Norway, and that need to assist, that need to have a remote access, and then we have to have this high level of assurance in identity, who they are, where they come from, and that kind of stuff. And of course, they can't use a bank ID because they are not. They cannot have a bank ID. So this is yeah. So this is something that we are hoping that EIDAS will solve in Europe, but it's only for Europe.
Yeah. And from the early specs and from the early drafts for the new IDAS, it doesn't seem to me that interoperable. I think they go on having some issues if they continue with the way of thinking that they are currently doing. So
I've heard that EU and Germany they are having a race because Germany has thrown a lot of money on this on their own, and having a lot of companies who are been early in the SSI space and push those standards. So the EU and Germany are kind of pushing each other in the right in each direction, or pushing each other in a direction at least. And the more countries that don't just sit and wait for EIDAS, because EIDAS is not supposed to solve everything. It's not going to be the solution for everything. It's going to be something that makes it interoperable across Europe, makes something interoperable across Europe, but it doesn't solve. It's not going to provide you with a loan statement anytime soon. It's not going to provide you with anything that's related to internal community data anytime soon. So there has to be multiple attempts, or at least efforts, to get into this. So I just came from a meeting where we were talking about interoperability and the problems, and having people from Germany, Canada, US, and a lot of and the UK, and even if everyone is inside the EIDAS Identity Foundation, they are still struggling to figure out how to interop, because it is still some issues there. For example, building a proper interop profile, and what is that profile? How do you make sure that it belongs with uses some of the specs? Can you build multiple profiles and make sure they can work together? But this is the focus. It's going to be a very hard focus on this until April 26th, when there's going to be an IIW Internet Identity Workshop in San Francisco. But there are a lot of open-ended questions that has to be answered, and that's why I really hope that Norway can put some money on on the application that's been delivered by you guys and Din and Diwala, because that adds on multiple angles, and not just everyone sitting and waiting for this EIDAS, because that's going to take 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So we need to put more effort than just wait for one, because then we're not going to solve it. We're just going to put centralize it into EIDAS.
Yeah, and as you said, EIDAS is not addressing everything. It may make some things easier, but it definitely doesn't solve this ongoing issue of opening up the potential of sharing the credentials.
No. Absolutely.
Yeah, also I wanted to add, like in the research question, I was also thinking about considering, so there are use of different ledgers, so considering if these are interoperable as well when we create the verifiable credential.
Yeah. That is kind of in a way solved, but I can provide some information on that when you start working on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like ledger agnostic system.
But perfect. Thank you for the presentation, Anushka. It spurred a lot of discussion and touching upon some important questions. And I hope that it gives some ideas, and I hope that the people who will be watching the recording afterwards will also learn a little bit and start thinking, because as I said before, the only way for us to get this going is to tell the story. And I just met an open source developer for SSI who lives in Norway yesterday. So it's starting to pop up some people working on this area.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
But a lot of work is needed.
Yeah, a lot of work is needed. That's for sure. Any further questions?
Looking forward to see the next presentation.
That's great.
Next step.
Yeah, we have also Alexander working on kind of offline transport layers, such that you can exchange credentials in environments where doing it over internet is either not desirable or kind of impossible. So he was looking in the specialization course and using NFC and Bluetooth as alternative transport mechanisms for exchanging some of the credentials or some of the handshakes that needs to happen in a kind of a secure way. And he will continue towards his master thesis working in the kind of a lower layer of the stack of how the transports can be either standardized or what standards already exist for some of the protocols that are a little bit out of the normal kind of mainstream, HTTP-based protocols.
Yep.
So it is also kind of an interesting area. We will see exactly what his problem formulation is once he starts, and then maybe we can have him next time to talk a little bit about his work.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Perfect. I will bring him when he's ready.
Yeah.
But then there's no more on the program, and if there's no more questions, I hope that we can continue the discussion asynchronously, and also we will see each other in further meetings that's coming up.
Sounds good. Thank you, Snorre, for organizing it.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.